All right, welcome to the free public live stream and just answering your questions about the retirement rules in 2026. I am excited to be here because there's a lot of stuff to cover. But before I get into that, I want to make sure that I gift you guys, whoever show up first, the free membership gift, and you get to watch some of the videos in advance before they come out for free, really. But really appreciate you guys being here. But there's a lot to cover, and I'm going to get started right away. And what I want you to do when you get a chance is to go to my website at firesidechat.com/resources, because you're going to get a lot of free resources on that website. You're not going to be charged or anything. But if you go to Fireside, excuse me, oh my, firesidechat.com/resources, and you're going to get the financial independence checklist. And a lot of people wonder, where do I begin in 2026? And where do I start investing when January hits? Now, a lot of questions are really answered in this checklist because, I always recommend starting with the HSA and Roth IRA. But before that, you want to get to that employer match, right? Do you have your FIRE calculator figured out going into 2026? Do you have your financial independence calculation, right? Do you have your annual expenses figured out? Do you have a rainy day fund? Do you have your employer match coming in? Maybe you're a federal employee or military member like I am. I was a veteran for 20 years, still am a veteran, I guess, technically. And, you get the TSP employer match of 5%. Maybe you're in the private sector. You contribute 6% and they match up to 50% of that 401k. And that's an employer match, right? Are you contributing at least up to that employer match amount? Now, do you have your debt paid off, right? A lot of people I've talked to in the past, they say, well, I still have my car loan. I'm still paying $600 a month on the car, on repaying my car, or I have a $3,000 balance in my credit card. I'm like, well, you're not doing this right, right? You're supposed to be doing FIRE if you're serious about investing in financial independence. You don't carry that balance, the credit card balance month over month. You don't have a car loan, you know, mortgage, fine. Personal loan, no, right? Those are the things that you want to pay off as soon as you can. And then do you have an emergency fund? And then you move on to the HSA and Roth IRA. And I'm going to go over those for 2026, but the HSA contribution limits, Roth IRA contribution limits, and how to achieve that 25% savings rate going into your retirement between your 401k, HSA, and Roth IRA. Are you able to max out your retirement because your income is higher? And a lot of times that I have seen is that higher income earners really get into the lifestyle creep and they end up spending more money and they're essentially living paycheck to paycheck because they get themselves into debt. And then there's the 50% savings rate. If you're a true saver because you're trying to retire early or you're trying to achieve that financial independence number early, you want to get to step 9. Because when I retired from the Air Force after 20 years, I am in this FIRE number where I can do whatever I want. I'm not necessarily retired from the Air Force, but I'm not completely retiring from the workforce because I get to do whatever I want. I get to have that freedom so that my kids don't have to worry about me and they don't have to make sure that I'm fed or I'm in a care facility or me paying for the expenses because I am financially independent, right? And then so that retire early portion is a big possibility when you think about it. And then the last step, pay off your mortgage, right? Those are the steps that I want you to really get to know when you start working on your financial independence journey. Now, anyway, so let's get right into the 2026 contribution limit. So the first thing I want you to understand is that the 401k, TSP 43B, 457B, essentially they're all employer sponsor plan. And when I look at the comment section, a lot of people get confused between IRA and 401k. They're two completely different investment vehicles. You have a 401k that's tied to your employer. IRA is tied to you. So anywhere you go, you're always going to have an IRA. But when you quit your job, you're not going to be able to contribute to that 401k, or maybe you're not going to be able to contribute to that 403b. And then you move on to a new job, and that new job is going to have that 401k with the employer. Does that make sense? Okay. So as an employee, you can contribute up to $24,500 in 2026. And if you're a maximizer for the 401k, because you're already on step 7 or step 8, then you want to calculate that based on the pay schedule that you're going to have. So if you get paid biweekly, some people you're going to get paid 26 times in 2026, and some people are going to get paid 27 times if your first paycheck lands on January 1st or January 2nd. The 27 paychecks don't happen very often. I think it happens like around every 5 to 6 years. And sometimes you just get that luck of the draw and get 27 paychecks in a single year. So you want to make sure that you divide that by 26 or 27 paychecks if you get paid bi-weekly. And if you get paid twice a month, then you want to divide that by 24. And then if you're over the age of 50, you're going to have extra $8,000 that you can contribute. And then between 60 and 63, you can contribute an extra $11,250. So that has not changed. And this year, you can still do $7,500 for the catch-up contribution. And for anyone, that's $23,500 for the for the 401k, TSP 43B, and 457. That is 401k. That is your TSP 403B. Okay. Now, for the Roth IRA, this is going to be a little bit different. So Roth IRA this year, or 2026, this is going up from 7,000 to 7,500. We haven't had that raise in over 2 years. So this is really exciting for the people who are doing the Roth IRA. And then for the catch-up contribution, it's being increased to from $1,000 to $1,100. So if you think about it, the total is going to be $8,600 for over age 50. Okay. So when you look at your Roth IRA, and whether you do lump sum investing because you're putting all 7,500 into the Roth IRA at the beginning of the year, or $8,600 at the beginning of the year, or you split it up, throughout the year, you want to keep those numbers in mind and start budgeting for your Roth IRA contributions. And if you're over the income limits, you can always do a backdoor Roth IRA, which is another common misconception, is that you can't put money into the Roth IRA because you're over that income limit. That's not true. All you have to do is put money into the traditional IRA, turn that into a transit account, and then you move that money over to your Roth IRA, and that becomes a backdoor Roth IRA conversion. But you want to make sure that you do not have any pre-existing balance in your traditional IRA that you rolled over from your 401k, or maybe you put into the traditional IRA in the past. Then you cannot do that backdoor Roth conversion and pay no taxes on it, because you're going to end up paying taxes on the backdoor Roth conversion. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Now, I know that's a lot of questions on that, and I'll get into that later on. And for the HSA, you are going to have a lot of people are in that benefits re-election season right now. So for HSA, if you're single, you can contribute up to $4,400 starting in 2026. And if you're on the family plan, you can put up to $8,750. Why isn't it exactly double from the single contribution limit? I don't know. Ask the IRS. And it's really irritating too to see that it's not exactly at $8,800, but it's $8,750. Now, if you're over the age of 55, not 50, for HSA, you can contribute an extra $1,000. Okay. Now, here's the trick that you need to know. If you are on a family plan between, let's say, you and your spouse in the family plan, that's all you have, and maybe you have a kid. And if you're one of you is 55, you can put that extra $1,000. But if you're both 55, only one of you can contribute that extra $1,000. The only way for you to put $1,000 and your spouse to put that other $1,000, you have to have separate HSA accounts. And it's very annoying to do unless you work and your spouse works too. And both of you are covered under the HDHP, or the high deductible health plan. And that's how you want to take a look at it. For the HSA, if you're on TRICARE, you're not going to be eligible for it, but you are eligible to open an FSA, which is the flexible spending account which has a completely different contribution limit, and it has a carryover limit. I believe it's about $660. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, but there is a maximum rollover limit, while the HSA does not have the maximum rollover limit. Okay, so HSA, you can put this money once you put that get that money in there. Oops, there we go. You can actually start investing. So this is what I've been doing for a while, and then this is what most people don't know, is that you get to invest your HSA. You cannot do that with an FSA because you cannot roll that over every single year. So this year it was $8,550. That was the contribution limit for the family, and then for single was $4,300. Excuse me. Now, once inside your HSA, what you can actually invest in an ETF, you can invest in a mutual fund. It just really depends on what your HSA plan says. Like if you have a mutual fund selection, you want to look for that low cost index fund, and you don't want to invest in something that is too expensive. So the first thing you want to look at is what's called an expense ratio. Okay. So when you look at the expense ratio, index funds are generally between 0.01% to something like 0.1%. It really, unless you're investing in like the sector ETF or sector mutual funds. But when you look at, let's say, actively managed mutual funds, they could charge you like anywhere between 0.5%. And sometimes I have seen something like 1.2%. And that's pretty outrageous, right? Like depending on how much money you want to invest, which means that if you get 10% return this year, that expense ratio is going to eat into your return. So this is something that you really want to watch out for when you choose the correct mutual fund, index fund, ETF, whatever that might be. So that's something that you want to watch out for. Now, when you choose an HSA or the correct healthcare plan, whether you have something like Aetna, United Healthcare, or let's see what else is out there. GEHA, I believe that's one of them. There's so many healthcare options. What you want to make sure when you look at it is it's called HDHP. Okay, that stands for High Deductible Health Plan. So when you don't select this HDHP option, then you're not going to be able to do. Then you're not going to be able to do the HSA. The HSA has to come with the HDHP plan. All right. The high deductible health plan has to be on your healthcare plan in order for you to have this HSA, and then start putting money for $4,400 and $8,750 or extra $1,000 if you're over the age of 55. I hope that makes sense. Okay. So that's the first thing you definitely want to look at. However, this is a big however. Not everyone should get the HDHP from my experience. If you have an ongoing treatment for yourself, your family member, or your children, that's going to cost you a lot more to pay out of pocket, then this HDHP may not make sense to you. That's where you're going to need to do your homework. And a lot of the benefits re-election do expire during the second week of December. So you want to compare how much that copay is going to cost you, how much the premium is going to be between the low deductible and the high deductible. Generally speaking, if you're young and you're healthy, or if you're old and you're healthy, HDHP would be a great option, because if you continue to invest, let's say over the next 30 years or 40 years, right? Let's say you have 30 years to do the HDHP and into HSA. This 30 years, let's say when you turn age 65, and if you start at 35, you're going to have about $700,000 in compounding interest over the course of 30 years in your HSA. Now, 65 is the huge key here that I want you to understand, because 65, you're eligible for Medicare, right? So I'm going to put Medicare down here. Most people retire, they get Social Security retirement paychecks. From that Social Security, they get their Medicare premium deducted directly from Social Security. But if you have an HSA, you can actually elect to directly contribute or pay for the Medicare premium when you're 65 and older. If you still have a healthcare, employer-sponsored healthcare plan, then you can still go with that. But if you choose to do the Medicare, then you have the option to put that HSA. And by the way, the 700,000 is 8% average annual rate of return over the course of 30 years. I forgot to mention that. But the HSA, you can pay directly into the Medicare premium. So that is huge. And the other thing I want you to remember is that when you're 65, your HSA actually becomes a traditional IRA. So HSA turns into TIRA, which is traditional IRA. So what that means is that before you're 65, you can only use your HSA money for qualified medical expenses. And there's a whole list on the IRS website that you can take a look at. But once you're 65, you can use your HSA for anything non-medical related, non-dental related. You can use it for, let's say you want to take a trip to the Bahamas and you want to take it out of HSA. So then you only have to pay federal and state income taxes on the withdrawal from the HSA, because it essentially turns into a traditional IRA at that point. Now, before you do that, what you want to make sure that you remember is that you don't use it for anything other than medical expenses. Otherwise, you're going to get a 20% penalty. Did I spell that right? 20% penalty for using non-medical related expenses before you're 65, and you're safe after you're 65. So you can treat this essentially as a separate investment vehicle. And that's why I always have an HSA, a Roth IRA, and my workplace 401k, and just max that out every single year. And you'd be surprised to find out how fast you can grow your wealth. Okay. So that is the HSA. And I talked about the IRA at the top, and I talked about the 401k. So let me go into the questions here. And I know you can always join my private community. You can go to firesightshow.com/private community. We have a lot of private members, private community members, and we're going to have a Black Friday sales coming up pretty soon. If you want to wait until Friday, you could potentially get 30% off. But one of my private community members just celebrated paying off $81,003 in total consumer debt. And the other private member just hit $1 million in investments. That's awesome. And the other person got $125,735 paid off in student loan. And they all get a trophy when they achieve those goals. Not necessarily for the private members, but for the private clients, they do get a trophy for achieving those milestones. So check it out when you get a chance. It is pretty sweet. Just say hello real quick before I get to the questions real quick. Naval Station, man, in Italy. That's awesome. I appreciate you joining live. How's the weather in Italy? It must be nice. Let me see. Yeah, so that's a good question. I'll get to this question for right now. So federal employees' TSP payments are on a pay period basis or calendar year basis. For example, 2026 is a pay period that starts in 2025. That is a good question that a lot of people get confused on, because their first paycheck in January is technically what they worked in 2025. And I know this person Chris is asking about the TSP, but this applies to the 401k, 403b, and 457 as well. Okay. So this is how it works. When you, let's say, let me look at the calendar real quick. Let's say your pay period started on, let me write this. Let's say your pay period started on December 14th. Oops, let me type this. Pay period, well, we'll call that 26. And it started on December 14th, and then it ends on December 27th. But your paycheck on, let's just say January 2nd. Okay, we'll just call that. So when your paycheck is on this January 2nd, even though you worked here from 2025, let me write that down, in 2026. your TSP contribution will begin in the calendar year in 2026. So the TSP payments are based on a calendar year basis. So no matter when you worked, what matters is when that TSP payment went to your TSP account. So if you're maxing it out in 2026, and let's say, what is it, the 24,500, and then divided by 27 paychecks, okay, 907, and you want to round that up to 908, and then the TSP will know to stop once you reach that maximum limit, but you always want to round it up so that you don't have any, a few dollars left over that you didn't get to contribute. You want to max it out. So if you do 908 per year, it starts on January 2nd. And this is going to be the 2026 TSP contribution. Okay. So that's where it's going to go. So I hope that makes sense. So that's where it starts. And then you just kind of move on to 2026, all throughout 27 pay periods. However, if your paycheck doesn't come in until, let's say, January 9th, then you only get paid 26 times in a year. So every agency is different. Every department, I don't know where you work, but if you're at ATC versus you're working at the GSA or whatever that may be, then you may your paycheck dates are going to be different from, depending on which agency you work for. So you want to look out for that and take a look at how many paychecks you're going to have in the entire year. Your HR should have that pay date calendar thing that they sent out to you, right? Take a look at that. Is it 26 or is it 27? Divide that by 26 or 27. And then you start from the paycheck date for your TSP. So somewhere around here, December 24th and 27 here, okay? Let me mark it in red. Right here, your payroll should stop around December 27, 28, whenever your payroll or time card gets certified. Then you want to start making the change for your TSP contribution. And sometimes DFAST takes forever to make the changes. You can always update the changes like 15, 20 days out if you want to, if you have the room in your budget, if you have to put a little more money because you're trying to max out your TSP in 2026. It really depends on what's going on. But again, get with your HR, find out how many paychecks you're going to have in a year, and then figure out how many times you want to contribute. But your paycheck date right here is what matters to your TSP calendar date. So hopefully I answered that question there. I was supposed to go to the private community member first, but let me go to that first real quick. Yeah, that's a good question. So how do I know that I'm in the $150,000 limit for the Roth catch-up next year? Do I look at my gross income or the taxable income? So I have a video coming out for that, but I'll explain it to you just real quick here because it is kind of complicated. It is actually your FICA wages, not your taxable wages, not your gross income. Okay. So you're going to see on take a look at your pay stub when you get a chance. But when you log into your pay stub, you're going to see something like gross income year to date, like this. Okay. And then you're going to have taxable income year to date, which means how much money you have made so far in 2025. And then you have the FICA income year to date, like that. Okay, so those numbers are going to be different. But when you look at the Roth catch-up limit, which is the when you're 50 and over, if you're over the age of 50, that $8,000 catch-up limit has to go into the Roth bucket if you make over $150,000 in FICA income. So that would be your Social Security or Medicare income taxable wages. Okay, that would be your Social Security taxable wages. If you want to wait until your W-2 comes out in January, then you're going to look at box 3. All right. Now, if you can't wait because you want to figure this out now, then you can actually look at your pay stub and look at the year-to-date income under the FICA income. And I have seen some pay stubs where they kind of break it down to OASDI or which is basically Social Security, and then you're going to see Medicare income. which is the Medicare taxable wages, and let's just say that's 150,000, that means that you cannot contribute your your catch-up contribution of $8,000 or $11,250 into the traditional 401k. You have to put that into the Roth bucket of your 401k, TSP 403b or 457. Okay. Once you have that, let's just say that you can't find this, and because your pay stub sucks, and I have seen some terrible pay stubs. How do I figure this out on, manually? Now you can look at how much you have contributed into your Social Security or Medicare. Okay. I'm going to use Medicare as an example because a lot of state employees don't contribute to the Social Security. Like I'm in Nevada, and Nevada state employees actually don't contribute to Social Security at all. Lucky them, right? But just kidding. But anyway, let's say you take a look at your pay stub and you're putting in 1.45% of your paycheck into Medicare every single paycheck. Okay. So 1.45%. And let's say you have a year-to-date contribution. Let's put Medicare year-to-date contribution with a total of $2,000. You see that on your pay stub. All you have to do is 2,000 divided by 1.45%, and that gives you $137,931 in Medicare wages. So you're under the $150,000 limit, so you can put your catch-up contribution into either traditional or Roth 401k. Now, what if your pay stub says 2,500 year-to-date Medicare contributions? You divide that by 1.45%. That gives you $172,000 in FICA wages or Medicare wages. Then you're over that $150,000 income limit. Now you can only put your $8,000 or $11,250 in catch-up contribution to your 401k into the Roth bucket. All right. I know it's confusing, but let me know if that is still confusing to you. But that's how you look at your income limit. Like this person asked about the $150,000 limit, because this is the new rule that is being taken effect starting in 2026. And if you can't wait until the W-2 comes out, then that's how you look at it from the pay stub. Now, one thing I want you to remember is that your most recent pay stub may have been pay period 24, 25. You want to look at your last pay stub of the year and then do this calculation. So I hope that makes sense. Great question, though. That is a really good question. All right. Let me go back to the YouTube live chat. So thoughts on maxing out the TSP early in the calendar year? So I would not do it. The reason is you're going to miss out on the employer match. So agency match is 5%. Okay. So agency employer match combined, if you put 5% in, you get that 5% back. If you put the whole 24,500 into the TSP, you're still going to get that 5% back. But if you don't contribute at all, let's say in December, because you already maxed out in November, you're going to miss out on that 5% employer match in December. That's why you want to just spread them out equally throughout your TSP. Now, let's say you do $1,500 every paycheck, and then you're like, or I shouldn't say 1,500. Let's say you want to do $1,200. Let's do some math on this. All right. Let's say you want to do $1,200 for the first 25 paychecks. That's $30,000. Let's bring that down just a little bit. Let's do 11. So, that's still too much. What about 1,000? 25,000. Oh man. Okay. So let's just say you're over the age of 50. Let's go with that. All right. So $1,000 multiplied that by 25,000. So you're already over the contribution limit. Now the December, your last paycheck. So for your pay period 26, you're not going to have anything put in for that paycheck. And then you're also going to miss out on the 5% employer match from TSP. Okay. So you don't want to miss out on that 5% match. at all. That's free money. And that applies to the 401k folks too. Or if you have 403b with a match, you want to equally spread out your TSP contributions, your 401k contributions throughout the year, especially if you have an employer match coming in. Now, some of you watching this may not have an employer match at all. So should I do it? I would still spread it out because your company could change their minds and say, you know what, we're making money right now. So let's do some profit sharing throughout the year, or doing something. Let's change the plan to having an employer match. So if that happens and you already maxed out your 401k, it's going to be a problem, right? Because you already maxed it out, then you're not going to be able to get that employer match. So I always recommend just spreading out your contributions, especially your 401k. Now, some people have asked, should I just lump sum invest my Roth IRA? That is up to you, because you don't get that employer match putting money into the Roth IRA. So personally, for me, not in any form of personalized financial advice, I always lump sum invest my Roth IRA on January 1st, this one coming up will be 2026. I actually have a video coming out that says my Roth IRA balance after 10 years. You're going to see some incredible growth from my Roth IRA. I'm going to show that in a future video. Then you're going to be able to see. But anyway, Roth IRA is completely up to you. If you want to just lump sum invest that, but 401k or TSP, I always recommend just spreading out your contributions so that you don't miss out on your match. Okay, great question on that. All right, next question. How do I know for sure if I'm over the Roth IRA income limit? Should I just wait until December to put money in my Roth IRA? Okay, so good question on this too. So the Roth IRA income limits, a lot of people misunderstand this. Oh, because there's an income limit, I can't put money into the Roth IRA. That's false. You can actually put money into the Roth IRA in a backdoor Roth IRA process. Now, I got plenty of videos on that. When you look at your Roth IRA income limits, let me just double check real quick. 2026 Roth IRA income limits. Okay, so let's go with a single person. So if you are single, okay, let me scroll down here. For Roth IRA income limits, single is 153,000 to 168,000. So what that means is when your income or your modified adjusted gross income is less than 153,000, you can put money directly to your Roth IRA. You don't need to do that backdoor Roth IRA process. But when your modified adjusted gross income is between 153,000 and 168,000, then some of your Roth IRA contribution you can put it directly into the Roth IRA, but some of it may need to be done through the backdoor Roth IRA process. Most people, when they're in that phase out range, which is these amounts that I'm showing you right now, they just choose to do the backdoor Roth IRA because they don't want to do two separate transactions. Now, the other way is to wait all the way till December 31st, and then make the Roth IRA contribution or the backdoor Roth IRA process. Man, got stuff in my throat. But why? Why do you wait till December 31st? Because throughout the year, you want to make sure your income is going to be, let's say, 160,000 throughout the year, or let's say 161,000. What if it increases, right? If your income increases, then you may need to backdoor your Roth IRA even more than doing the Roth IRA contribution directly. Okay. Let me see. I know I have a PowerPoint on that. Hold on one second. Let me pull this up real quick because I know I have something. Man, it looks like it closed on me. Let me take a look here. Okay, so I have the back. So let me tell you this. All right here, backdoor Roth IRA. There we go. Okay, so this is how backdoor Roth IRA works. So let's say your income limit is, let's say your income is going to be $170,000 next year. So here's your checking account, right? And I use this tool to educate my clients all the time. So, you're getting this for free right now. So you can put your money into checking account, your money, let's say $7,500, into your traditional IRA. So your traditional IRA is really irrelevant at this point because traditional IRA is basically the transit account between your checking account and your Roth IRA, which is called a non-deductible contribution. Now, they're all non-deductible because you're already over the income limit, right? So if you're single, if you're over $89,000, this is a non-deductible contribution. Now, once you put $7,500, okay, or $8,600 if you're over the age of 50, you put money into the traditional IRA, and then you can move your money from traditional IRA over to the Roth IRA. So this is a non-deductible contribution. Then you're doing a non-deductible conversion. You still don't pay any taxes on it, even though it says conversion, right? Because it's after tax to after tax transfer. Then you're going to transfer it. Oops. I'm sorry. Then you're going to make sure that you fill out a form, IRS form 8606, stating that $7,500 or $8,600 were in after tax dollars. That is the key thing here, is that showing the IRS that you put after tax money into the traditional IRA and it is not deductible from your income. All right. I hope that makes sense. Once that money is in the Roth IRA, then you're going to invest in the Roth IRA, not invest in the traditional IRA, because you want to make this transfer to happen pretty instantaneously, as quickly as you can, because any interest that you earn inside the traditional IRA is considered taxable income or taxable earnings. So you want to transfer that as quickly as you can. All right. I hope that makes sense. Now, here's the downside that you want to make sure that you understand with the backdoor Roth IRA. When you put money from checking account to traditional IRA, again, that is after tax contribution or non-deductible contribution. However, let's say you have $10,000 that you rolled over from your 401k or TSP, 403b, it doesn't matter, because you left that job and you move it over to the IRA. Okay. So you have a rollover IRA in your traditional IRA. Now you have a mix of pre-tax money in your traditional IRA and you have an after-tax money in your traditional IRA. So in this situation, you have $10,000 in pre-tax money and you have $7,500 in after-tax money that you're trying to convert into your IRA. So now that pro rata is going to be triggered because now you have a mix of pre-tax money and after-tax money. So when you look at the total balance, once you put that $7,500 into your traditional IRA, you're going to have a total of $17,500. Now, in the eyes of the IRS, now you have a mix of $10,000 in pre-tax and $7,500 in after-tax, right? So what happens? When pro rata is triggered, $7,500 divided by $17,500 is 43%. That 43% of what you contributed in $7,500 is not taxable. However, the remaining 57% is considered taxable income. Okay, so when you put $7,500 over to the traditional IRA here, 57% of that $7,500 is considered taxable income. So when you multiply that $7,500 by 57%, $4,275 of that $7,500 is considered taxable, but the remaining $3,200 is considered non-taxable conversion. Okay, so that's where you want to be careful. Now, when you're in a 24% marginal tax rate for the federal income tax, you're going to end up owing $1,000 in taxes for that conversion. And if you're in the 32% or higher, you could end up owing more than $1,400 in taxes. You don't want to make that mistake, and you want to make sure that your traditional IRA balance is at zero before you move any money, your after-tax money, over to the traditional IRA. Now, if you say, hey, Sai, but what if I have some money in my traditional IRA? What do I do with that, right? What you can do is actually move that over to your current 401k, 403b, 457, or TSP. You can actually initiate a rollover that you move from somewhere else over to your IRA, and then you can move that money in your IRA over to your 401k. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm talking about just strictly traditional IRA here. So that's how you want to make that fix. I hope you got something out of that, but it is a lot to explain. And if you still don't understand it, you can schedule a consultation with me at firesession.com/consultation. It is a paid session, and I want to be clear on that. And I know it's a lot to process, even if you watched it in the last 10 minutes. But great question from that guy. Okay. Can I use both FSA and HSA if I have the high deductible health plan, or is it just one or the other? No, you cannot use both FSA and HSA if you have a high deductible health plan. So again, I was talking about the HSA. If you're enrolled in a high deductible health plan, you're going to have an HSA, but you're not eligible to put money into the FSA. However, if you're a federal employee, you can put money into the limited healthcare FSA with an HSA. So HSA is going to be separate, right? Limited healthcare FSA is going to be separate from the HSA. That money is going to be used for dental and vision expenses. That's why you're allowed to have both, but you cannot have healthcare FSA with the HSA. But you can have limited healthcare FSA if you're a Fed with the HSA. So I hope that makes sense. Clear as mud, right? That's what we used to say in the military. Clear as mud. Okay. I'm getting ready to retire from the Army. Congrats. Retire from the Air Force this year. So you're going to retire in 2026. And if I get a pension for 40K and more, and more in disability, can I just retire without working? So I don't know your entire financial situation, but what I always recommend is that you go to firesession.com/resources, and you're going to get the free financial independence checklist right here. And make sure you calculate your FIRE number first. I don't even know your FIRE number, right? That's where you need to figure out what your expenses are, your essential expenses versus discretionary expenses. How much do you need to survive, right? How much do you need every single month to pay your rent, mortgage, utilities, transportation, insurance, communication, which would be your phone bill, internet, all that stuff. Those are things that you need to survive on. How much is that going to cost you every single year? Do you have your mortgage paid off? Those are the factors that you need to know. Do you have your, how much do you have in your investments, right? The great thing about the military, really, even myself, like you get a military pension, and most likely you're probably going to get some kind of VA disability pension as well. If you're, if you're injured during your service, or, if you went to a combat zone and inhaled some of the good old burn pit like I did back in 2006, 2008, 2010. Good times, right? But you want to look at what your pensions are going to look like. So if you get $40,000 a year in military pension, and you get, let's say, $20,000 a year in VA disability pension, that's a total of $60,000, right? One way to look at it is that when you have a pension, let's say you have a total of $60,000 a year coming in, multiply that by 25. I thought it was going to give me the answer right there, Apple. Guess not. All right, so 60,000, multiply that by 25. That's basically worth $1.5 million right there. That is how much it would be worth, the same if you had an investment of 1.5 million. But because you're getting, let's say, $60,000 in pensions between military pension and VA disability pension, then that's basically your base FIRE number. Okay. Now, if you have, let's say, let's figure this out. Let's say you want to retire with $2.5 million, because with the 4% withdrawal rate, I know some people will say 5% is fine, but let's just say 4%. So that gives you $100,000 a year in income from $2.5 million. But because you have $60,000 a year in pension, all you really need is $40,000 a year from investments, right? Now, how do you calculate that? Same thing, 40,000, multiply that by 25. That gives you $1 million. So if you had $1 million in investments, you have $60,000 a year in pension coming in, you only really need you're going to have $100,000 a year in income. I mean, could you live on that? I would say most people can, right? So that's how you can look at it. When you look at your FIRE calculation, that's why I say step one is always, always important. If you don't budget, you're never going to figure out what your FIRE number is going to be. If you don't know what your monthly nut is supposed to be, if you don't even know what that means, then you don't know your FIRE number. Because when I ask anyone on the FIRE journey, they know what their FIRE number is. If you ask me what my FIRE number is, it's a lot higher than 2.5 million. I'll tell you that. But I am pursuing that FIRE for a reason, right? But because I want to maximize my retirement, I want to have some luxury in my life and stuff like that. Because I only live once. I really do. I want to have some fun when I'm retired or when I'm not doing anything. I want to travel as many times as I want, and that needs to be in your FIRE calculation. There's a channel that I really like. Our Rich Journey. I'm not sponsored by him. I've never talked to him, but just a little shout out to that channel though. It really incredible. If you want to check it out, they retire early at 39 or 40. They moved to Portugal and they retire with 2.5 million in FIRE with a FIRE number, and they talk a lot about the FIRE investments. I love the FIRE movement or FINE movement for some people, right? This is the reason why I started this channel, is because I want to be financially independent and have the ability to retire early or retire whenever I want or do whatever I want, starting a business or opening a shop or do all these financial consultations just for, because I enjoy doing this stuff. But whatever that purpose is for you, figure out what your FIRE number is going to be so that you have your investments to pay for your lifestyle expenses. You have your investments, not your 9-to-5 job, to pay for all of your expenses when you retire or pay for your travel. I want to travel to Japan. I want to travel to, Europe. I'm going to Europe next year. I can do that because I have the FIRE number figured out and I have the FIRE investments that can pay for the travel. I hope that makes sense. So really good question though. And congrats on your retirement in 2026. I'm excited for you. That's awesome. Okay. All right. Next question is the employer match included in that 401k contribution limit for 24,500? No, it is not. So that is another good question because a lot of people ask that in the comment section too. So 24,500 is your employee limit. Okay. So when you have employee and then there's the employer, all right? So the limit is 24,500 as an employee. That's you, right? I'm an employee to my business and I'm also an employer to my business. But the employer match is not included in that. So the maximum is actually $72,000 per person. It doesn't matter how many 401ks you have. You may be someone with a TSP and a 401k because you're a military reservist or guardsman and you have a private sector job with a 401k. So if you have two of them, you still cannot exceed 24,500 as an employee and $72,000 total between employee and employer. Now, 72,000 minus 24,500 equals 47,500. Okay. So that's how much your employer can contribute to your 401k. 24,500 plus the 47,500. So when you get that employer match, let's say that 5% employer match, it actually goes into this pot. Oops. It actually goes into this pot of money right there, the 5% employer match. The 24,500 is what you're contributing directly from your pay stub, your paycheck, into your 401k, TSP, or 403b. Any employer match or profit sharing, okay, those are all going into your 47,500 pot right here. All right. I hope that makes sense. So no, it does not it is it's not included in that 401k contribution limit for 24,500. Great question. Okay, let me take a look. If I'm going to max out my TSP next year, how much should I deduct? I get paid twice a month. You divide it by 24. So 24, that if you're going to max out by, let's say, 24,500 divided by 24 paychecks, that's going to be about $1,021 in 2026. Okay. That's usually starting on January 15th if you get paid twice a month, because you get paid on the 15th and the 31st, unless your payroll is weird where they pay you like on the 7th and the 21st or something like that, then you want to start on the 7th. Now, if your paychecks are like on the 6th and the 20th, then you want to start on the 6th. Okay. But you want to divide it by 24. If you're doing the maximum, that will be 24,500 plus $8,000. That's 32,500. And then you divide it by 24. You just put in $1,355 twice a month. Remember, twice a month is different from biweekly. Biweekly paychecks are either 26 or 27 times in a year. Bi-monthly, that's twice a month. So that would be 24 paychecks throughout the year in 2026. So those are more stable paychecks. But when it comes to 26 or 27 pay stubs, you're going to get paid 3 times in 2 or 3 separate months. Okay. I hope that makes sense. Oh, and I don't know how old you are, but let's say you are, if you're between the ages of 60 and 63, that you want to do 24,500 plus 11,250. That's a total of $35,750. And you divide it by 24, then that gives you $1,490 twice a month per paycheck, $1,490. So by the end of 2026, you're going to have all of it maxed out. Okay. And also, I don't know if you're a Fed or if you're a military. Maybe you're a military because most Feds get paid biweekly. If you're military, though, you only contribute to your TSP once a month. So if you're truly trying to max out your TSP in 2026, it's 24,500 divided by 12, and that gives you $2,042. And I'm guessing you're like an officer, if you get to do that, or if your spouse is making a significant amount of money on from the spouse's income, then yeah, by all means do that, you know. But really good question on the TSP contribution schedule. Okay. The back door you talked about is just opening TIRA, traditional IRA, and then put money in there, right? What if I have a rollover IRA in Vanguard, but I do a backdoor in Fidelity? Do I still get hit by pro rata? Yes, you do. So the pro rata is based on how much money you have total in your IRA, regardless of how many brokers you have. I have seen people have, you know, rollover IRA in their Vanguard. They have a traditional IRA with Fidelity, and they have another rollover IRA with Schwab, whatever. It doesn't matter how many accounts you have. It's the total amount you have in your traditional IRA. So if you're just trying to do the backdoor Roth IRA with Fidelity and you have a balance in your Vanguard, yeah, you're still going to get hit by that pro rata. So you want to move that Vanguard or whatever account that you have your rollover IRA in, you can move that back to your 401k or TSP, whatever that may be, to avoid that pro rata rule. Okay, good question on that. Okay, let's see. Well, I just left the Fed and started a new job with a 401k. Should I just leave my TSP alone or move it to my 401k? It depends. I know you guys love my answer when I say it depends, okay? It depends on your age. Are you close to your retirement age? Now, 55 comes to mind every time somebody talks about 401k. Because if you left the federal service at the age of 55 or in the year that you turn 55, you can actually take money out of your TSP penalty free as long as you turn 55 in the year that you quit the federal government. Same thing with the military. Okay. Now, let's say you're nowhere near 55, you quit at 40, right? then the first question I would ask is, does your new 401k have the rule of 55 like the TSP did? Because the rule of 55, like I said, essentially gives you the power to take money out of your 401k when you retire, quit, get fired, or get laid off when you turn 55. Then I will move that money from TSP to 401k because you get to enjoy that money at 55 in the new 401k, as opposed to leaving it alone in your TSP. You don't get to touch that money until you're 59 and a half. So that's the huge difference right there. Now, you can also move it to the IRA if you want to, but I talked about the pro rata rule. If your income is too high, you want to make sure that you don't move money into the IRA. Otherwise, it's going to become a big problem when it comes to the backdoor Roth IRA. So like I said, it depends on your financial situation. It may make sense for you to just leave it alone, or it may make sense for you to move it to a 401k if you're too young to get that rule of 55, or move it to an IRA. But then you make too much money where you have to do the backdoor Roth IRA every year. So depends. Okay, good question though. I have a solo 401k. So is the maximum contribution 24,500 plus the 8,000 as a self-employed person? So solo 401k is really, really special. So it really depends on how your business is structured. The S corporation, you still get that W-2 pay stub, right? So that would be a little bit different. Because as a S corporation, you can give yourself the employer match, but then there's a limit on how much you can put in. It really depends on what the bottom line is of your business. For, let's say, single member LLC, if that's what you have, then you have the 24,500. That's the maximum, plus the 8,000 if you're over the age of 50. But as an employer, you can actually put money into the solo 401k as a single member LLC. If your profit is, you can only contribute 25% of your profit into the employer 401k match. So every business structure is different. So make sure to talk to your CPA and find out how much you can actually put into your 401k. But as an employee, when you wear the employee hat, you can still put that 24,500 directly deducted from your business, your own paychecks or whatever. And as far as what your profit sharing is going to be, like if you want to give yourself an employee match, yeah, that's going to depend on what your bottom line is going to be. Okay, so good question on that too. All right, cool. So that really pretty much wraps it up. And hope I answered some of the questions for the 401k, TSP, IRA, and stuff like that. I know there's a lot going on for 2026. And, feel free to schedule a consultation with me by visiting firesightchat.com/consultation. We also have a tremendous private client program where people just pay off their debt. They work on their financial independence their journey, and learn how to save money, invest their money, stuff like that. Check it out on my website. That will be firesightchat.com/private clients. And a lot of people get a lot of benefits out of that because people have paid off their debt, invest their first 100,000, they invest their first $1 million. And, it's whether you want to make it happen or not. It's completely up to you. After we do the 60-minute consultation, I don't even bother to follow up because they do eventually come back and become my private clients. And I'm not bragging or anything. That's really how it's been. Is it's so beneficial for the people who are seriously trying to get out of debt or trying to invest so that they can retire early. Check it out yourself and see if that's the right fit for you. You can always email us with questions at hello@firesidechat.com. And I think there's a banner for that if you want to write that down. So we have the resources, we have the community, and you can schedule that consultation with us. Okay. But anyway, I really appreciate you guys being here, and happy Thanksgiving, by the way, in 2 days. Anybody smoking their turkey on Thursday? Because I am. I'm smoking turkey, tri-tip. My wife is making ham, and we got a bunch of side dishes. We got families coming into town, and we're really excited to have them. So Let me know what your plan is for Thanksgiving, and how do you want your finances to improve in 2026? We'd love to hear that in the comment section as well. But with that said, I will see you next time.